Hello, and welcome to another edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes, where we talk about therapy, but we're also talking about coaching today. So I'm kind of excited to have Mr. Craig Graves being the co-host again back with us. He is an unbeatable mind life coach, got his certification, and so we're going to talk about therapy today. What is therapy and what is coaching? So it's kind of cool. You get a little bit taste of both worlds because it's become you said on our take one of the show tonight, multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Like that's big.
It seems like the last I heard a number, it was like $3 billion, still a lot of money though, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's become wildly known, and you can get coaching, and I think there's huge confusion about what's the difference between the two, mental health counseling and all that, and then coaching. Aren't they the same? And I'm going to tell you, you would agree. I know because we've spoken about it that no, they're not. There are definitely some differences. So welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get personal insights directly from a therapist in your own home or personal time in your car. You get to see the world through the lens of a therapist, but be aware it's not the delivery of therapy services, actually, in any way. So give us a 5-star reviews. Thank you so much for listening to this show. We enjoy doing it for you and with you. So Apple iTunes allows you to make comments. That really helps us out a lot, believe it or not. Like it on Facebook. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn. Remember all that social media stuff we did, Mr. Graves?
Yeah, I remember.
We still do it. We still do it. So this is the human emotional experience, and we endeavor to figure this thing out together. So, Craig, how do they find you? What are you doing these days? You are a coach, so how do they get to you? What all are you doing?
My website is wininyourmind.com. You can find me there, and it's got links to everything else, obviously. Social media, I got a little YouTube channel, stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I like to point out that you can do that worldwide.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
It's different than therapy. We'll start off there, I guess. Therapy world, if you're not in North Carolina, I'm only licensed to practice in North Carolina. I cannot do therapy with you. In coaching, there is no licensing body, as we'll probably talk about. But you can literally coach people all around the world. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, I would say there probably is a licensing body. I think the ICF has some standards and those kind of things. But you don't have to be licensed to put up a sign on your door and say, "Hey, I'm a life coach." You could start tomorrow. Neil, you could start tomorrow if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you told me that one time. You said, "Why don't you coach?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of a,
Yeah.
you know me, man. I'm a certification kind of dude."
No, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, I guess we'll talk about is the differences in the licensing procedures or lack thereof.
I actually didn't know. Are you sure that there is a licensing body? I think there's a body.
I'm not sure if it's a licensing
new.
body. Look it up, Neil. Look up the International Coaching Federation or something like that.
And see if that is, because I have the impression that there isn't a formal license. There's lots of programs that you can get that are certifications,
right?
Which is a very different thing than a legal
unbeatable
licensure,
mind, right? Yeah,
because we're really to have a licensure body. What you'd have to have is a legal licensing body that orchestrates a legal orientation, either as a nation or as in the states as a state. And if you're going international lines for a licensing body, then as a world authority.
What'd you find, Neil? Neil, what you got for us, buddy?
It looks like it's just another certification. So the International Coach Federation, there's another certification path for that one too.
Okay.
So my guess is it's something along the same lines where theirs might be more broad with life coach, where like your Unbeatable Minds is very specific to like Mark Divine and his philosophies and what he sees that works. But yeah, I didn't see anything about a regulating body like your therapist and stuff like that.
And that's a very important difference that I'll point out. I think it was going to come up, but let's stay here for a minute to really draw a big distinction with that. A license is very different than a certification. A certification means that you go through a process to kind of learn the program and the philosophies of who created this. We could do through a therapist size coaching program.
You could.
And certify coaches to be a through a therapist eyes coach. And that's very different than doing a license.
Yes.
A licensing process has a legally binding reality that you cannot deliver this particular service in this particular area unless you're licensed.
Right.
And the board monitors anyone who's licensed. And the fact of the matter is, licensing boards are not for the clinicians. They're really guided, and their purpose is to protect the public, right?
Yeah.
From therapists that don't do good things. And they have all kinds of complaints and real problems with therapists that they work with us on when we get, dinged. I mean, you never want to get that call from the licensing board, right?
Yeah,
As
I'm sure.
a clinician.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's a bad day.
Yeah.
But we have ethics that we have to follow. We have laws that we have to follow. And if we don't follow them because we have to be licensed in order to do therapy, you can lose your license. Therefore, you can't practice. It's just like a doctor, a medical doctor.
Right.
Right.
I think maybe in our world it's a little bit different. And I know it is from, so for example, the Unbeatable Mind coaching that I went through was a certification process that was, I think, 16 different modules that were delivered online.
Right.
And then we had to submit videos to the staff at Unbeatable of ourselves coaching somebody, a person. They had to consent to that. And then we had to do 2 volunteer clients for 8 sessions each, and submit that to the organization. And then we had an exit interview. So once we met with the master coaches, if you will, there at Unbeatable, we were certified coaches. And then the licensing, you paid a fee to Unbeatable to be able to use their logos and some of their marketing materials and stuff like that. So I think that sounds a little bit different than what you're describing as far as licensing, at least from the Unbeatable organization.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different. The license that you mentioned there is just, they own a patent for the logo and this type of thing. That's
we're licensing you to use our
very different than
our
professional licensure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and okay, so we'll go further with that, I think, in comparing the training a little bit later on. But I will say this as a little bit of a plug, really, frankly, not because I'm plugging you or I know you, but because I've seen some of the coaching stuff that's around there. The Unbeatable Mind program is pretty robust. I don't know if you've compared, Craig, a lot to other programs and stuff. You probably, I'm sure you did when you were looking to do this or something else or whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, that's robust.
Yeah.
That is a robust coaching.
It definitely is. If anybody listening is interested in becoming a coach, then definitely look into Unbeatable. I mean, the content is delivered online. I think there were 16 different modules. They host a monthly webinar where they have content that's, Mark Devine's there, retired commander, Navy SEAL, Mark Devine. Some of the other coaches that are high-level coaches, Dr. Laura Pence was one of those people at one point. I'm not sure if she's still there or not, but there's some pretty interesting people that are on those webinars, and those are designed to help people become better coaches. There's topics. There are coaching sessions, mock coaching sessions. So, Chris, I may coach you on one of those calls, for example. And then the coaches would provide feedback. And so it's a great program. There's once a month they have a office hours call. So like if you're dealing with a client and
they support you afterwards.
Hey, I got this client. His name's Chris, and he's giving me a hard time, and he won't do what I tell him to do, and stuff like that.
He's non-compliant, Mr. Gazdick.
But it's a great program, and you do pay tuition to go through it. But once you're in, you can go to those webinars. I don't think there's any restrictions on the amount of time that you can go to those webinars, and they're all posted online afterwards. Of course, it's a secure site, but it's a great program. It really is.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about some of the training, I think. But again, let's camp out here just another moment before we launch into what is coaching and what is therapy. Just in kind of comparison, I mean, that is a robust program. But the thing is, what you've got to realize is in order to be licensed, I mean, dude, when you think of like social workers or new counselors, what they're paid, frankly, and in DSS programs and various places where you hear social working, the pay is not great. You do not get in this to get rich.
Yeah, right.
Working with people.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But listen to what we have to do: 4 years of college training, all of that you just mentioned, and then you go to 2 years graduate program. And then you spend literally 2 years in what you would think of as an understudy or an apprentice, like in other industries. We spend 2 years under supervision, doing full caseloads and meeting weekly with a seasoned therapist that's again licensed to be in many disciplines a supervisor. And then finally, what is that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're almost a decade in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Before you can practice independently as a licensed clinical social worker. Now that is for social work. Psychology has their process. Counseling programs have their process. So when you think of it's a robust coaching program, I mean that just gives you a little bit of an insight, in like wow, we do a lot to get to the point of independent practice.
It's funny that it's maybe it's ironic. I don't know the right words, but therapists put in how much money do you have invested in education?
Oh, look at the college costs now. It's insane.
$100,000. It's insane, right?
Yeah.
So there are people out there who have zero training as coaches.
Yep.
Making $1 million a year.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy, and
I'm not knocking on therapists or social workers, but they don't make a lot of money. Am I right? And you got some coaches who have no training and they're crushing it financially.
Yeah, and I would wonder what the breakdown is, how many people that is, because I think there's a lot of people that 80%,
and I'm sure there's
are coaches, and they're not.
I'm sure there's 99% of coaches aren't making anything probably.
That sounds high. 90 might not be too high,
but there are a lot out there who are really crushing it as coaches, making lots and lots of money.
Yeah, it is crazy. So let's go into a segment here and spend some time, Craig, and maybe try to tell us like what is coaching. Right? What is coaching?
Man, what is coaching? Like you said, it's broad, and there can be different kinds of coaches, life coaches. So Unbeatable Mind, for example, is really a mindset-based coaching program, I would say. But a lot of the things that are in there, would be standard with any life coach. What is your purpose, for example? There's an exercise called the obituary, where you write down what your obituary would be when you die, what you want it to be when you die, and then you say, am I living up to these standards now? And I've seen that in multiple programs, So there's that component. But there's, like you said earlier, there's also all kinds of different counselors, grief counselors, coaches, right? Yeah, coaches, and I'm sure that there's grief counselors, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's counselors, therapists. Okay. And we say we specialize in working with adolescents, or we specialize in substance abuse, or we specialize in grief counseling.
Yeah.
But there, and you can get certifications, which is different than a licensure.
Yeah.
You can get certifications in something to say that you're a specialist, but I'm trying to draw a little bit of a distinction. It's almost like when you have a therapist saying that they're specialists or they specialize in X topic, what they're really saying is they enjoy that particular topic. They've spent time on that topic. They've kind of, researched a little bit more that area of therapy and whatnot. And they may have gone so far to meet some continuing education requirements to get a certification. That's almost sort of in line with what you described.
Yeah.
Just a little bit ago.
Yeah. There's probably a lot more types of coaches probably than therapists, I might say. Financial coaches.
Yeah.
Nutrition coaches.
Yep.
Physical training coaches. Divorce coaches. I mean, you could have a marriage coach, right? I know some people who went through some marriage coaching.
Right.
Not really marriage therapy, but marriage coaching. So there's really all kinds of different coaches out there doing different things. Really the goal of the coach is to help you move forward. If you're stuck, if I'm having trouble losing weight, or I'm having trouble saving money or budgeting my money, and I'm just drawing from those examples that we talked about earlier. If I feel stuck in my career and I want to move on, there's career coaches. I've done some career coaching with people in the past, and some financial coaching too, through the Dave Ramsey program and those kind of things. So when I think about the definition of coaching versus therapy, and you and I have talked about this before, and you've disagreed, and I'm sure you probably will now. But the way I see therapy is you're dealing with the past, maybe. My father beat me when I was a kid, or I was molested, or my wife cheated on me and I'm having trouble getting past that. Those might be deep emotional things that you really needed somebody to dig into with you. Mm-hmm. And that's not really what a coach would do.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all.
And there's kind of a fine line. So if I'm working with a person who I think may need to go deeper, then I'll say, hey, man, that's kind of out of my realm. I got a good friend named Chris Gazdick. Here's his business card.
Right. You know, there's an article I popped on this, and it's in the show notes, and I thought it was interesting. To that point, she's actually one of these people. You taught me more than anything a few years ago. You know, there's a lot of people that are therapists and coaches.
Yeah.
Right? And she's one of those variety. And what she kind of layered it out. It was really cool the way she put it. She's like, basically, one of the big differences, and we'll talk about this in a segment in a little while, what the differences are. But one of the primary differences she landed on is that coaching kind of assumes you're generally well.
Right.
Right. You're well. You don't have a diagnosable condition, or things aren't stuck in your life experiences with trauma or any number of substance abuse issues. Although you may have a substance abuse coach, you know, there's blocks and gaps and, you know, missing pieces or disorders or, you know, realities there for you that coaching just assumes that's not there.
Right.
That was one. I thought I liked the way she put that.
Yeah. And you know, Chris, I've worked with people in a coaching kind of environment who were also seeing a therapist about other things that they were working on that side.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not here to dig really deep into the emotional issues of the past or past traumas and stuff like that. I'm here to help you set some goals, figure out how you can get there, and hold you accountable to do so.
I think one of the coolest coaches, I don't know if she called herself a coach, but remember that big spin where minimalism became, you know, very prominent.
Well, that's still a big thing, minimalism.
Is it still a big thing?
Yeah, it's still a thing.
That lady that started it, I don't know if she calls herself a coach, but, you know, she would come in and basically help you to throw stuff away.
Oh, was that a reality show or something?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember a lady, but there's a couple of guys. They have there's a Netflix documentary. These guys wrote a book called Minimalism or something like that.
Yeah, and they basically come in and help you throw stuff away.
It's really cool.
I know it's a minimization, so don't hate mail me, but you know, it I don't, like I said, I don't even know if she calls herself a coach or whatnot. So, well, let's move to what is therapy. Okay, in sort of contrast or what have you. So I kind of came up with a definition in my own words. I looked at it as a dynamic relationship developed between two people with an artificial protection in an artificial environment that allows people to experiment with new emotional patterns. That's just what came to me. That's not a formal definition. But I think that catches the flavor of a lot of what we do. By artificial environment and artificial protection, what I mean, well, actually, there's not actually some real protections. Like, I am not allowed to tell anybody else. I am held by ethical boundaries. I mentioned we spent some time with the licensing. Like, that's a big deal. But by artificial intelligence environment, what I mean is, you know, in this room right here, we're sitting in my therapy office, by the way. Span the cameras around, right? This is a real therapy room. But it's kind of artificial in that what we talk about in here, how we talk, you know, the examination that we look at and look with through, or your experiences and whatnot, is not like you can have really, like literally, I think, in any other venue. It's a one-of-a-kind, unique, sort of protected space that becomes safe to be able to talk about really difficult things that people don't talk about. So that's what I mean by artificial. And the relationship that's developed probably is very similar, actually, with coaching, but it's dynamic. I mean, it's well-researched and steeped in psychological study in what happens. You know, lots of things like countertransference and transference and, you know, the boundaries of the clinical alliance that you develop. And, you know, it's robust. It's dynamic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on when you're doing a different way of talking to people. I like to highlight what I try to help when I'm supervising younger clinicians, what I try to help them understand with the dynamic nature of this. Like, younger clinicians, particularly when they receive a check for the first time, right? They literally take a check for, you know, $100 or $50 or whatever it might be for your copay or your fee, and it's kind of freaky. You're like, wow, like, what did I do for this? Like, did I
had a conversation, right?
Right, I had a conversation. And what they fail to realize, even as young clinicians, right, is this is a different, changed perspective where 100% of the time I am really focused on what you're talking about, what you're doing, what you're experiencing. And that may be for an extended period of time, like an hour is a long time to do that. In a normal conversation, in a really good relationship, you may get 5 minutes of that. But in a normal conversation, what's happening is I'm sitting here waiting for you to stop talking and thinking about what I'm going to say next. Regardless of what you say, I say it next, right? In a therapy experience, this is the first time a person has ever experienced that in their entire life.
Yeah.
Like, how valuable is that? How dynamic is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Active listening.
You cannot replicate
is
that.
What we would call that in the Unbeatable program.
Well, yeah, active listening, but at least in therapy, it goes even further so far as active interpretation, matching up psychological dynamics that you may be operating on and don't know it, looking at hidden thoughts that you don't even realize are driving. We talked about implicit bias on the show as a really deep, involved example.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah. I don't know about all that psycho mumbo jumbo you're talking over there.
I know, right?
But you can, but seriously though, you can learn a lot by just or you can gather a lot of information by watching somebody's reaction to. And I'm assuming that's what you're saying.
A lot.
So if you ask me a question and I look off, and maybe that's a clue maybe to something that's going on there. So yeah, I mean, that's some of the things we look for in a coaching session would be that same body language, tone of voice may change.
Right. Well, you're developing a coaching relationship.
The person may tense up, and you're looking for those cues too. And that's why the Zooms and on the phones aren't as effective, because you can't pick up on those things.
Same in therapy.
But I think your point there. I remember one time before I got into Unbeatable, you were like, Craig, you should be a coach, man. You're pretty sharp at stuff like this. And I'm, sometimes my brain is more logical. I need a process, right?
Yeah.
What is my
Structure.
process? Yeah, and I go between that and creativity. I think I hit both things. So I have processes in coaching, but my creativity shows there too while I'm going through the process, if you will. So I said, well, I'd love to be a coach, but I don't have a process. And you told me that people would pay me money just to sit and listen to what they're saying.
I remember that now.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that now. Yeah. People just want to be heard. And you're right. Most people are just waiting for you to shut up so they can start piping off their big mouths,
Absolutely. When you're talking in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful thing to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also a powerful thing to be seen.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not just I see you, but boy, it's so vulnerable, though. I mean, the therapy thing is intimidating. And I'm going to give you a normal spiel that I give here in a moment that talks to that. But to be seen is to, like, here's my emotional, kind of stuff I don't talk about very often. And, like, wow, what a powerful thing to be, and here's the key, seen and then accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes this artificial in the sense that you're almost guaranteed to be accepted. Not because you just paid money, but because that's part of the professionalism that's engaged here. It makes it easier to be vulnerable. It makes it easier to deal with some of those things.
And I would think that the people who get into therapy and hopefully coaching too are in there because they care about helping people. And the things that they hear, they have empathy and understanding.
You're starting from a genuine place, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, geez, I got to listen to all these people, these problems all day. It's not.
Sure.
You can't have that attitude.
I get that question a lot. How do you do that all day long?
Yeah, well, for real.
You have to. That's part of what training and supervision is about, to learn kind of how to do that. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you my spiel. I'm going to take a risk here a little bit. All the therapists listening to the show are going to maybe pick this apart, but that's okay. I'm out there, and I'm going to put this out there. Maybe it's something that if you're a therapist listening that you could take, and I have no patent on it. But I think it's a helpful thing to really gear into right in the beginning of the relationship. I will say these things that I'm going to go into. So I'm going to kind of pretend like you're a client, Craig, and do what I do. I think not verbatim 100% of the time though when I sit with somebody.
Do we need to switch and lay on the couch over there?
I do find myself sitting over there a lot. Lay on the couch. Somebody actually asked me one time, should I lay on the couch or whatever? And I'm like, well, I mean, you can if you want to, but it's funny the stigmas, the stereotypes and divisions people have about this sort of thing. It's absolutely funny. I should say funny. I mean, it's whatever. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It was funny to me at the moment. So I'm going to tell you, Craig. So I like to give a spiel about what to expect, so that we're kind of on the same page, and how this works and what to expect from me, right? So I say that I'm pretty active in a therapy session, so I have a lot of back and forth, that I put forward there, and I tend to put a joke there, here and there. I'm going to leave my 2 jokes out. Well, I'll leave my 1 joke.
Is it about West Virginia?
No, it is not
Toothbrushes?
Oh my God! Do we have to get? I miss making fun of you for the only West Virginia joke that you know, and now
you brought it up, dude. Yeah. You walked right into that one.
Yeah, I did. So I'm pretty active in therapy, back and forth. A lot of people in my field do a lot of listening and just reflect back. So that's not my way. I'm pretty engaging in what I do. So I've also been doing this since 1995. Usually make a joke about age, even though I look so young. I've said that many times. And I'm looking to get rapport, by the way. I'm looking to get connection and de-escalate with some of those humor pieces. And by the way, I will already have had some interaction with you. Maybe you're into dancing. Maybe you're into, football or cars.
Jiu-jitsu.
And I'll throw a little bit in.
Could be in a jiu-jitsu.
To be able to engage, right?
Yeah, right.
So I'll say that I've been doing this since 1995. And the reason why I really put that out there is because really in all that time I've learned that I've never heard the same story twice, truly. And even though that sounds like a cliche, that's really kind of the truth.
Really?
And so to me, I also tell that I've been doing this since 1995 because, really to me it's a big deal. Like I recognize when people come to a therapy experience, it's a really big step, and I've found in all that time I'm really humbled by it. I'm really respectful about you even being here today, and I do make jokes. I do get silly sometimes, and I want you to understand I never want that to come off as disrespectful, because I really take what I do seriously. I do cognitive behavioral therapy, but I really use the whatever works approach, right? So my main idea is I look at how is life like and how do you want life to be like, and I bridge the gap, and I spend a lot of time there. Although there's barriers and things that can get in the way of that, we work through that to get to where you want life to be like. I meet with people once a day, once a week. Sometimes it's short term, 3, 5, 7 times. Other times it's much longer. As long as we're being productive with I just described, then we figure out how we want this to go together. And today I got to ask 1,000 questions. We got to get kind of the big picture, and then next time we can laser in on things. And finally, we do. Insurance cares a little bit more than I do, but we do arrive at a diagnosis, and we'll figure that out. And it's important to understand what we're dealing with mental health conditions and stuff. So that's the end of my spiel. And that was kind of hard to do with you because it's different. I'm looking at you, my buddy Craig, and so I skipped through that a little bit. That was weird for me. So hopefully I'm a little bit more relaxed in my delivery. But I think I got the main points in that I wanted you to understand how this works.
I thought you did great, man.
Right?
Yeah.
It puts, and I also realized that there's a lot there. And I'll even go through that and talk a little faster sometimes. And I'll get a gauge of the person. Are they serious? Are they laughing? Are they not? Are they smiling? Are they nodding? How's that going? And I know it's a lot of information, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Because we'll review that. What I'm really doing there is describing a major overview of process. How is life like, and how do you want life to be like? And I want to highlight that right now because that's probably the most important thing in there that I want somebody to understand.
Yeah.
And what to expect with this.
And that's probably a question a coach would ask. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And then let's develop a plan to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an area of great similarity.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So
do you feel like you're coaching some days? I mean, do you?
That's an interesting question. I mean, the answer probably is yes. There's coaching involved, but It's funny, that lady with the article, she went down and made various points, the training we talked about, the
Yeah.
licensure we talked about, the barriers that you recognize that we work with, the assumption that somebody's actually well. She made the point, this is a therapist and a coach, right? And she made the point that it probably sounds like I'm downing on coaching, and she didn't want to do that. That wasn't her intention. But it is important to draw out a lot of distinctions so people know what they're going to,
Yeah.
particularly when you're going to coaching, so you're not going expecting something that, guys, you're not likely to get. And that's important. Same thing with therapy. We can't make magic happen. But when you ask me, am I doing coaching some days? Probably. I do targeted goals. I do behavioral goals. We set up, what you'd life to be like I just said. But I feel like it's like coaching plus. So we're going to do a segment here on what some of the similarities and differences.
Okay.
And so when I say coaching plus, I think, and that's genuine in the moment, right? What I just thought of there. Coaching, do we do that? Yes. Plus, we also really deal, as we've already established, with a lot of the barriers, trauma, substance abuse that's blocking what you'd like to be able to do, divorce that has created insecurities that you'd like to have a healthy second marriage, right? Like we're dealing with all of those life experiences, relationships, the daily stress and the grind, in addition to in addition to diagnosing real medical realities. And that, to me, is one of the biggest differences because, and because you were the co-host of the show, we've had diagnostic shows. And I'm big on realizing and would even help clinicians out there. I look in the camera to talk to therapists. I don't understand why we have such a strong reticence to diagnose. And that does exist in my field. And I understand, don't want to put a label on somebody and this type of thing, but for a very long time in my career, very early on, I kind of figured, if somebody's got a brain functioning issue like ADD, we know that's biological. I have no problem diagnosing. I do it very cautiously. I want to get really good and trained. I want to know what I'm looking at, what I'm looking for. And diagnosing is a science and an art, but it's crucial. And I worry that sometimes people, I'm sure it's happened in counseling with me, but I don't know why you would go to a years-long counseling process and be confused about what your diagnosis is. But yet I'm willing to bet that there.
Well, I guess is it possible to go through a year's worth of counseling and there not be a diagnosis?
No. It's a medically necessary treatment that insurance pays for. Now, okay. That being said, now we're going to go down a bunny trail, and I appreciate you asking that question, and I don't want to go too far with it because there are some realities, right, where when you're dealing with diagnosing, we have something called adjustment disorder. Okay, that's a diagnosis. That means you're having a difficult time with clinical symptoms to deal with your dog dying or, a problem with your son, right? So that's supposed to be a 3-month diagnosis, and there's a lot that goes into diagnosing. There's also sometimes I'm dealing with somebody who has codependency. I actually think codependency should be a legitimized diagnostic condition, and it's not because there's not any biological reality with that. So we'll be able to diagnose adjustment disorder with anxiety is another diagnosis. So you can't be in therapy and not have a diagnosis because it needs to be medically necessary. But there's a but that I just kind of tried to explain.
Yeah, that sounds interesting to me.
Yeah.
That you have to have a medical diagnosis to continue the therapy.
Talk to the insurance
for
companies.
insurance to pay for it. That's weird.
Yeah, talk to the insurance.
So do you have to make some BS up if there's no thing?
No.
And the reason I'm asking this is I've had the opportunity in a past experience to set in on some therapy sessions, and people sign waivers for me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And this one guy comes in, and it was like a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. How's your new girlfriend? Oh, she's doing good. Relationships in check? Oh, yeah, we're having fun. She's got kids. She travels. She does this and that. And at the end of it, I'm like, you guys just sit here and talked. That guy didn't have a diagnosis. You know, and maybe he was paying for it out of his pocket. I don't know, but
Well, the diagnosis goes.
They
in
just
the
had a
assessment.
conversation, and that was it.
Yeah, the guys goes through an assessment. We're doing that in the beginning of a therapy relationship. But you know where you took me back to is Fitz Pearls, I think is his name, and he well-known clinician, started a brand of therapy. My brain is blanking on it, but we watched a video, and it was in therapy training, and so he's sitting in a chair and he's engaging in what seems like just conversation. But it's the dynamics of all that you're working with in the psychology of a person and the connection that you get into. And he made the point, he raised his arm, removed, and he was in sync. It was a Gestalt type thing. I don't want to get too technical, but Gestalt therapy is a type of therapy. There's some mirroring that goes on. There's some different things that happen. What's that, Neil?
Pearl created the Gestalt.
Yeah, okay. I was right.
So you're mirroring what the other person's doing or whatever?
You do. No, stop it, man. I'm going to come over there and throat punch you if you make fun of my industry. I'm kidding.
Mirroring's a legitimate thing, man. It really is.
It is. Yeah, okay.
On a subconscious level, if you mirror what somebody else is doing, they subconsciously start to trust you more.
Okay, you're right. I thought you were being silly.
No, I wasn't being
You're on point.
Yeah.
And the feedback that clinicians were doing, because Gestalt therapy is a very specific and weird thing. I've been trained in it. I don't
know much about that.
I don't use it. But the question is, what happened here? And he's like able to really talk in depth about the mirroring, the Gestalt that occurs, which is a theoretical perspective of the here and now and what you're experiencing and how you're connecting with the person and moving through difficult moments. And you have what seems like just conversational moments. So there's a lot going on. That's about as quick as best as I can get to that, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because which is why, by the way, I kind of am more active when I'm working with people, because I think that we do lose people sometimes, in early on in a therapy relationship when they're not really understanding what they got out of it. I like to teach a lot. I will give a lot of information. I want people, and I know that they're not going to retain it all, and that's okay. I don't use a lot of worksheets and all this kind of thing. I'm giving you a lot of information as I'm talking to you.
So when you're working with a client, do you set up for example, if somebody's stuck with some issue in a coaching session with me, I would look for some way for them to recreate and practice certain things to be better at this particular issue. So for example, we've talked about the big 4 mental toughness on a couple shows I've done. And the fourth thing is micro goals. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, then if you just break things down into small chunks, you can better manage that mentally, and you can also get it done a lot quicker,
Right.
So if somebody comes into your office and they're feeling overwhelmed, do you go through practices like that to recreate the situations to help them work at getting better at it?
Yeah, it's a good question. The short answer is yes. A lot of times people are asking for strategies and methods to manage our emotion and whatnot. I've actually formulated a professional talk based around a list of, I think I got like 70 on there, and it's a developing list that I intend to continue developing. It's kind of cool. So we sprinkle those things in, but what happens is when you're operating out of a particular modality, you deal with that stuckness in a myriad of different ways, depending upon what theoretical approach you're really applying. It's back to that idea, real simple. How is life like, and how do you want life to be like? Well, coaching plus the first plus is we're dealing with those cognitive biases that are ingrained in your subconsciousness. We're dealing with the family barriers and dynamics that you have and hang-ups with maybe issues of projection. That's a psychological thing. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with the trauma reactions that come up now, as we've talked about a lot on the show, Craig, in your amygdala that create startle reactions and, just several things that go on. We're dealing with these stuck things in a way that's looking at, well, what is creating the stuckness? And there's a lot, given your theoretical orientation, that you do with that, sprinkling in strategies and tips like, break things down to small pieces.
Yeah, interesting.
So I don't know. Boy, there's a lot.
So what if there's not a past trauma necessarily driving the stuckness? Let's just say a person's shy and introverted, and they want to get better at public speaking, for example.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you would say that. That's a really good example. That's when the plus comes in, because a lot of times when I find that is the presenting issue, I'm looking at what diagnostically might be going on for this person, and very often I will find that there is an anxiety condition the person never knew that they had. It could be generalized anxiety disorder where you worry. It could be, a social phobia that's a very specific form of anxiety. They want to get better at public speaking, but they've had a struggle all their life meeting new people and avoiding social situations. It's a diagnosis. So the stuckness might be the reality of a condition that's ongoing their whole life and never knew it.
So how would you treat a condition like that?
Well, therapy.
Well, and the reason I
coaching.
ask is the more you do something, it seems the easier it becomes. So what's the lady's name on Shark Tank? The real estate investor?
I'm not sure.
Oh, man. Yeah, Barbara Corcoran. She said that when she was early on in her career, she was going to go speak in front of a group of real estate investors or whatever.
Right. I think I know where you're going.
And she got up there and she couldn't even speak.
Right.
This lady's on TV now, but she couldn't speak in front of these people. Nothing would come out of her mouth. She went off stage shamed and humiliated.
Yeah.
So what she did is she joined Toastmasters and just started practicing and presenting, and now she's on TV, and so the thing is she just went out and did it and eventually got comfortable enough to be okay with it. So I mean, in a situation like that, would you say there's an underlying condition, or she just did it and conquered her fear, if you will? I mean,
there's no way that I can really answer that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess not. So
really, there isn't, because
can't
there's
talk
so
to
much
her,
that I would go into.
But you see the point, right? She just did it and practiced it and got better at it.
So in the assessment phase of meeting people and figuring things out together, which I say on the show, and I mean it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I do in my work. I'm going to be assessing so many things, and you're going to be knowing. I'm going to be talking to you. Like I said, I'm active back and forth. I'm not doing anything weird. I'm just talking to you, and I point things out. And we figure it out together. I'm doing assessment, and if I'm ever even thinking about diagnosing something, we talk about it. Like, it's not a mystery. It's no behind the curtains kind of thing. But what you were asking makes me think of oftentimes we all have anxiety, and we all freak out a little bit when we're in a situation. We all might freeze totally. And the reality of it is, when you do something more, the better off that you'll get to doing it, comfort and whatnot. And even if you have a condition, that's still the same. The challenge really lies in the fact that when you have trauma, or when you have substance abuse and insecurities from that, or a diagnosable condition that is of an anxiety nature, that's extra hard. Because your brain literally is working against you in ways that typically people aren't really experiencing when we're just anxious. I mean, we might feel super anxious even, but there's not a condition there. So
yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah,
you might feel really anxious or really whatever, stressed, whatever, but you're not suffering from some underlying clinical condition.
Yeah, unless you are. And I'm looking at how you operate in marriage. I'm looking at how you operate in your own self-talk.
Yeah.
I'm looking at how you operated in school when you were younger. I'm looking at how you date. I'm looking at, a lot of things as I get to know you that I'm pulling in to see what criterion for a diagnosis can be met.
Yeah. So in a therapy session, do you find yourself giving advice?
Yeah.
Or asking questions and bringing it out of the person?
I do, and I think that's probably going to be a little controversial.
You do what?
Giving advice.
Yeah,
I think the lady in the article would have said no.
See, because most of what we're taught as coaches is to bring it out of the person.
Right.
And you'd be amazed, as a therapist, how you can change somebody's
perspective?
Life,
yes.
By asking questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
it might be a question they haven't asked themselves. Elon Musk just bought Twitter.
Yeah, he did.
And he said the answers are relatively easy once you figure out which questions to ask.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And I love that quote. Man.
It's a great
bomb,
quote,
right? Yeah, it's
a
good.
great quote.
It's really good.
And that's the mass majority of what it is that we're doing, and that's part of what is behind as well. Let's figure it out together. I want to go back and be clear. You ask if I give advice, and I said yes. What's really more accurate is sometimes I will give direct suggestions. And when I do it, it's very, very rare. It's not really common. And I'll usually find myself pointing out, hey, have you ever thought of this? And so we can parse words. I mean, the pure therapy is, no, it comes from you. You're guiding yourself. We're pointing out different facets. We're observing things, and we're reflecting them to you. I mean, there's a lot that I'm doing, but the simple thought is, there's sometimes that you might give a suggestion.
Yeah.
And you can interpret that as advice.
There may be times when I say, have you thought about this? There may be times where I even give advice,
Right.
There may be times where I lead somebody into a conclusion with questions.
Right.
And what if you would have done this?
How does this work? And what?
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I will say that you're not going to go to a therapist to get advice.
Yeah.
I'll be clear there. So.
Well, I think I don't know if a lot do or not, but I know coaches who give advice.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the best way to do things.
Correct. Yeah, we go through so much training in the therapy world to deal with something that I alluded to earlier, countertransference. I mean, we do a lot of work on not allowing your own issues to come into the room, preventing your own rationalization or your own process. Like, there's a lot of fail-safes, if you will, that really protect the relationship from yourself. Right? Like, a lot of supervision goes into that. I mean, there have been I'm going to be honest, some tough moments in my training where I've been called straight out, on wait a minute, what did you do there, and what are you thinking, and why was that the process? They do therapy, if you will, but they're telling me basically, like, yo, you just brought something into this relationship that you've got to manage. That you want to go a different route with this so that it's really, really not about you. Like, for instance, let me give you a golden rule. We do use self-disclosure. We'll disclose stuff about myself. I do that readily and freely. Not super often, but I'm pretty genuine. And I think that has some great strengths that people get a lot out of work, in therapy when that's the case. But it needs to be, hopefully I'm compliant with this. It's a tough standard, but 100% of the time that has got to be for the benefit and about the person you're working with, not yourself. Now, 100% is 100%. And I'm not going to say I do that 100% of the time. And that's a tough admission. Like, I take that very seriously. Very, very seriously. Because you have to really facilitate yourself. You have to really kind of be on guard about your own. And when you give advice, getting back to that, man, you open yourself up to a lot of that. And so, very sparingly, more like suggestions. And we're trained in a lot of ways to kind of facilitate our own process. How's that? Let me see what we have on our list, Craig, because it was just a great conversation, by the way. I knew this was going to be pretty cool because you do coaching and I do therapy, and I knew this was going to be kind of fun. How are we doing so far, you think?
I think it's good. You're right. It's a fun conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, similar to that I came out with. The major differences I see in diagnosing. I think what you were talking about and alluding to earlier, you look on the show notes I put, like, I know that Craig will say a lack of focus on the past. But I wrote, like, we can be, front-sided focused as well, is a phrase from The Unbeatable Mind, or really from SEALs, but also do the dynamics of the past with psychology. And I was going to propose does coaching, but I think we've talked a lot about that. Targeted goals versus some styles in therapy, such as mine, is dealing with mindfulness. A lot of in the moment. What are you? Where are you at? And the goals with therapy or coaching, I would wonder, are just more targeted, like you said. how do we get what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to run through these, and then we'll chat about any that stick out to you. There are so many modalities of therapy, actually, and there are so many forms of coaching. I think that's a great similarity.
There's lots of different types of coaching.
And there are, I would say, several, maybe even many different theoretical perspectives with therapy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you got Gestalt therapy we mentioned with Mr. Pearls.
CBT, logotherapy, different
Right.
kinds of therapy.
Motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
Substance abuse therapy is kind of almost 12-step therapies.
Yeah.
It's not really a therapy, it's a program, but yeah, there's a lot of different modalities, and I do tend to eclectically mix them together a little bit. I mentioned the ethics and the board designed to protect the public. Insight about clinical barriers, the conditions I was mentioning. We've talked about a lot of these already. Some people feel like the therapists don't say enough. I wanted to camp out there for a minute. Feedback is limited because of their style and avoidance of being direct. So, I wonder in coaching. Okay, this is a cool one. So, I wonder out loud with you in coaching, are there many sessions that you would observe or sit down with and feel like, wow, they didn't really teach me anything. I didn't really get what they were trying because they didn't even say that much. I mean, they did a lot of listening and I just did the talking, Is there really ever really that in coaching? Because I would envision.
Well, I
more
always
engaging.
ask. I always ask at the end of the conversation, what was your biggest takeaway today, or what impact did you get? Something,
Yeah.
And nobody's ever said, well, this was terrible. This sucked.
Well, they're
I
not
didn't get anything about
They ain't
it.
going to tell you that.
Well, maybe not.
maybe they would.
But if they're paying me money, they should.
No, well, I would agree.
Absolutely. So I've never had anybody say, nah, this was terrible. Didn't get anything out of it.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is,
There are times when it feels that way to me, like it might have just been a conversation for an hour.
yeah, in
And I'm
coaching.
like, man, this sucked. And then I'm like, hey, what did you get out of this today?
Yeah,
And they might say something
with something.
profound.
Yeah.
So I think I have felt that way. And maybe people are, maybe clients have just, fed me a line to make me happy. But
When
I
you're
don't think that's the
interacting-
case.
When you're interacting in coaching, is it more like a normal, quote unquote, normal conversation where there's back and forth, or is there a 5-minute period of time where you might say nothing? 10 minutes, maybe even.
I've never gone that long, but there are times when I'll just pose a question and sit there.
And use the silence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of uncomfortable, right?
You have to.
But, I mean, there are times where that happens.
Okay. So there's use of silence, but
Oh, yeah.
see, that's something that I think, particularly with certain modalities of therapy, psychodynamic, for instance. I don't even think we've mentioned good old Freud yet in psychodynamic analysis. That which still happens, by the way.
Yeah.
People use psychodynamic. Well, I do. I should say. There's a lot of listening. I mean, you might, in that type of a modality, say a fragment of a sentence maybe every 4 minutes if somebody's not talking. Or if they're really talking, I can imagine you might even go a half hour with not saying anything. Just
There are situations like that.
nonverbals and head
Or you may
nods
ask a question every couple of minutes or every 5 minutes, and it may take a long time to get the answer, So I mean, I think there are times where I think it really should be this way. I've been in coaching sessions where I was the coach E. I'm like, good grief, is this person ever going to shut up?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's that too. I've heard that criticism as
Am
well.
I- am I
Somebody
getting
literally
coached
just told
here?
me this week. I went to a therapy session years ago, and I heard more about her than I did me.
Yeah, right.
Right, which you don't want.
You don't want that.
You don't
No,
want that.
Exactly.
Right.
You know.
So there's extremes I think that do happen, but I think in general sometimes, particularly younger clinicians, I'll say again, I've found this a lot in supervision. They're afraid to be direct. They're afraid to just lay it out there.
Yeah.
Which just goes into the diagnosing. I'm telling you what I'm diagnosing. I'm telling you what I see. I'm telling you what is observed. And And there's a great hesitancy, so we'll just sit back and maybe ask a question. I wonder, should I say this? Should I say that? And thus the person feels like they didn't.
Well, I think it's really the job of the therapist or the coach, either one, to say things that are bold and maybe hard to say or even hard to hear.
Yeah.
For time, because people need to hear that.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can go in there and say, "Oh, I don't want to hurt Chris's feelings," and say, I think you have to go. Not that you just say, "Hey, Chris, you idiot," you got
a lot of trust,
but you have to be able to say,
you have to
be able to say hard things to people and ask hard questions, and and maybe even.
Yeah, for instance, Craig, so you've been talking about feeling kind of down and stressed out with work. When you're feeling those things that we were talking about, lack of motivation, lack of energy, have you ever really thought about ending your life?
It's a tough question.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Hey, you should have seen his eyes on the camera in the YouTube or the Facebook Live, right?
Yeah.
I know you were playing that out a little bit, but it is. It's like, people are afraid to ask. But that's something that's really important as a part of an assessment that we do. And so some of that comes with experience.
And I think you have to say hard things too. I had a client one time who we would design practices. We would say, by the next session, we're going to do this. I'm going to follow up in 3 days to see how it's going. I'd follow up, no response, get on the next call. The guy hadn't done anything. And then you say, and then he's like, "You got any advice for me?" Yeah. You got to do the work if you want to get ahead. If you want to move forward, you got to actually do something. So you have to be able to say those kind of things to somebody. And
it's hard, to do that, because you're playing around. I mean, that's why I say I am so humbled when I'm working with somebody. It's just so humbling that somebody. I mean, people have shared things with me that they've never shared with anyone in their life. Like, that's a big deal. That is such a big deal. Or for the first time, they're talking about their experiences in Vietnam, and they've lived their entire lives. I'm thinking about someone very specifically, very early on in my career, and that stuff.
Yeah, and you're the guy that's listening to those
Man.
stories. Yeah,
I mean, what an honor.
Yeah,
what a big deal.
Yeah, it really is.
That's why I say that spiel that I did, and I hope I did it decently to give you a real genuine understanding, because I want to set that up, and I mean what I say when I say it. So are their goals the same or different? I leaned on the article for this. I'm just going to go about this real quick because I'm aware of the time a little bit. I thought I liked what she was talking about. So check this out from this therapist who's also a coach. She says the basic presumption of coaching is that coaching clients are in a good place mentally and emotionally and ready to receive guidance and instructions on how to make changes that will help them achieve their goals, which I think we talked about. I think she nailed it.
Yeah.
Right? She also says, and I bolded this out, I thought this was interesting. She says most life coaches, unless they have a background in traditional counseling, don't know enough to know that the true obstacles of their clients' goals may be clinical issues, such as depression, anxiety, ADHD. I would add bipolar, and even schizophrenia, even and whatnot, because people can function on a high level with issues like that. And that, I think, is a big, crucial aspect of, are you sitting with somebody that's going to be able to identify conditions that are absolutely the function of what's blocking you chronically in your life from where you want to be. So she said the basic summary is therapy works to address and solve problems, whereas coaching is helping people to achieve their goals. I think that was a pretty cool, broad statement.
That's pretty good.
Pretty broad, but yeah I think pretty on point. I hope I haven't sounded like against coaching like she wrote in her article, because I'm really not.
I didn't get the impression that you were against coaching at all from the conversation we just had.
Good, but I do think that there's a lot of things that are lacking, and I will be honest about that. I'm really concerned, as big as coaching has become, that there's a lot of people talking, working through things that are unlicensed, and a lot of things are really missed.
Could be.
And I'm passionate about mental health. And I'm passionate about substance abuse. I care a lot, having done this for so long. And there is a little bit of a concern about the misperception in what you're getting when you're spending $500 to sit with this fancy coach that is completely missing the fact that you have chronic depression.
It could be that, though. I think a lot of coaches work with people who are already performing on a high level. They're just trying to get to the next rung in the ladder or whatever. So, like, some Tony Robbins, for example.
Well, I'm going to back that up, actually.
Is a coach who's working with people who are already very successful. They're just trying to become even more successful, I'm
going to double down on that, actually, because the way you just put that made me think of what I'm saying is as of a little bit of a concern.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of business coaches, and they're working with CEOs and people that are highly successful, and they're wanting to take the next step, broaden their scope, or however you might call a professional business goal.
Mm-hmm.
But what they very well likely, I would even say that, likely are missing with a lot of those folks are bona fide anxiety-based driven conditions that create that drive that makes them quote-unquote successful.
It could be.
And I think there's a lot of that.
There very well could be something like that.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you're coaching still and you're kind of making the next step and whatnot. But my problem is that it gets maybe missed.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity to identify something with that person in their life that they've never identified is missed. And then they have a lot more pain, emotional pain moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's important the way Unbeatable Mind, for instance, you're very, when we originally talked about doing this show, Craig, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
I think you made the point. I mean, you were dogmatic and very clear. Like, yeah, they are training us. They are telling us, refer to therapy when you see something or a mental health clinician that isn't the scope of what it is that we're doing. I mean, you couldn't have been clearer about that.
Yeah, you're correct. And Unbeatable they reiterate that over and over.
I hope that's done in other programs.
I hope so too, but it definitely is in ours.
Because that's really, really crucial.
Yeah.
Really, really important.
Agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I was going to do a little bit of a segment on how to find a good coach and how to find how to search out for therapy. I don't mean to short it, but we did do a show. If you would look up real quick, we did that. We did that together, Craig.
We did how to find therapy or something like that.
What? Yeah, was it?
Yeah.
Boy, that's been a while ago.
Yeah.
And we talked about how to access therapy. We spent a lot of time with that. I don't remember what it was titled.
I don't either. I don't remember what show that was, but we did talk about that. I'm not sure what you were thinking along those lines, but I think we could probably just quickly say
super condensed. Yeah.
If you're looking for a coach, find an organization like Unbeatable. Tony Robbins has an organization. There's other organizations out there that certify coaches, and then they have a list of coaches that you could choose from if you were going to get coached in that particular area. And read reviews. I mean, Google's golden, man, with reviews and those kind of things. And I would imagine it's the same thing with therapists, right?
There are. The internet has allowed us to, have, but you also got to be careful about those things, man. They can be goofy, out there as well when you're, as with all social media things, just be careful what you read.
Yeah, but I think if maybe we should look up Chris Gazdick and see what kind of reviews he has, Neil.
I got good reviews. But I'm
if
going
you
to
got 100,
tell you a story.
But those are gold, man.
Yeah,
if you got 100 people that leave a good review for you, those,
absolutely. Let me tell you a true story.
Digital word of mouth.
And this is very humbling for me to tell you, but I'm going to do it. The spiel that I gave you earlier, I've crafted that over many years, really, like for a long time. And the piece that I added, I do make jokes and get silly sometimes, and I never want that to come off disrespectful because I take very seriously what I do is kind of my lines. That's new. And that's only been in my spiel maybe for about 4 or 5 years. And it's because I did read a Google review.
Really?
Yeah, and what it said was, and I truly hope this person is listening. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that till right now. Like that would be, I hope, because what they said is, it was easy to talk to. Started out really well. We were dealing with issues, and went about 3 sessions in, and then he laughed at me. I couldn't, Craig. I can't tell you enough. I was just, I want to eat this microphone. Like I was mortified. That's why I say what I say now, because I do de-escalate with humor sometimes, and I do that purposefully.
Yeah.
For clinical reasons. And this person felt, and again, if you're listening, this is a very good moment for me to tell you, like, I did not want to laugh and give the impression that I laugh at anybody, because that is so far from the way that I operate and the way that I feel. And so I say that now. It bothered me so much that I added a complete part of my spiel to it.
Yeah.
So there's things.
That's the great thing about those reviews, man, is people put stuff like that in there, and you can say, hey, I can see that.
Yeah.
Change how I do things, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did. You didn't come up with a show, Neil. Yeah, that's a bummer. It was very early on in our program where we did it, probably episode like 20, 30, maybe 50 or possibly 100. But we took a deep dive on that. What is therapy or something like that? So look it up.
I remember.
But it's really important to do an interview. I've had people just this week, somebody asking me questions about my process and what I've done. I think that's a really good thing to do, to reach out before you go meet with somebody.
Agree. That's good.
You look at your insurance panels to see who's on panel to use your insurance.
That's really good. Having an interview. I haven't thought about that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I've made a direct suggestion of that with people. And understand, you go and do an initial assessment. And you're assessing the therapist as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you don't feel good about the process, go do another initial appointment.
Yeah, I know coaches in Unbeatable's program who've met with potential clients.
Yeah.
And they would say, you know what, I think Neil would be a better fit for you. I'm going to refer you to him.
And we do that as therapists as well.
If
there's an issue I'm not really up on or frankly uncomfortable with, like we were taught and trained back to don't let your stuff come in. If I've been molested as a child and your primary issue, or you're coming to therapy for that, and I'm not in a good place, I'm going to refer you out.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm not facilitated myself that great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that does happen, and that's important. So wow, we got it. Maybe
there. Episode 23 was how do I access mental health?
That's it.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah.
Episode 23. And we talked a lot about how to choose as well in that episode, I believe. So.
And the moment I go episode 22, you are crazy. Why we need a diagnosis? Because you talked about the diagnosis.
I packed them together.
So it might be good checking that one out too, because you did talk about the importance of why you diagnose people when they come in. So those could be two to check out, episode 22 and 23.
Yeah, I remember that now that you say. I did pack those together for that reason. So, all right, Craig, this was fun, man.
Yeah, I
appreciate
enjoyed
you doing it.
Glad to spend the evening with you, man.
All right. So you guys have a great week, and we'll tune in next time.